What's up, guys? You are watching Fight Feed, and we're going to be diving into the UFC Fight Night Vegas 109 card with Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Before I dive in, just want to say, guys, I'm sick and tired of everyone complaining so goddamn much about Apex cards. Last weekend, we had one of the best Apex cards, especially like two Fight of the Year contenders potentially, back to back on the main card. So as fans, let's stop bitching and just enjoy it. And I have to say, I am on the side of when there's no fight card on any given weekend, it really, really sucks. So I am fine with us having these Apex cards if we need to have them. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in to my picks and predictions for UFC Fight Night Vegas 109. Starting off with the first fight on the card, which is Gabriella Fernandes versus Julija Stoliarenko. The tale of the tape for this fight. So we've got Gabriella is 31 years old. She's turning 32, it looks like, on August 17th. So she's basically 32 years old, 5'6", reach of 66 inches, 10-3 record, 2-2 in the UFC. Stoliarenko, on the other hand, 32 years old, 5'7", 69-inch reach, 125 pounds, 11-8, 2-6 in the UFC. Taking a look at their styles. So Gabriella Fernandez, she's kind of a mixed bag here. 40% of her wins are by submission. She's got 20% of her wins by KO. One call out for her is that she has never been submitted in her UFC career. And I call that out because the woman she's fighting in Julija Stoliarenko is a submission ace, specifically looking to grab that arm and rip it off if she can. Stoliarenko has 91% of her wins by sub. So that should tell you, like, she's clearly looking to submit whomever she is in that cage with. And I even added that strength of a very solid arm bar. Now, weaknesses that I've called out, there's not too much that I need to call out for Fernandez, I would say. But what I would say on the side of Stoliarenko is that she is not a very good striker, and almost every single one of her losses, 50% of her losses at least, are by KO. So that's something to keep in mind in this fight. Taking a look at their momentum. Fernandez is on a 2-fight win streak. She last fought on November 23rd, 2024. She's coming off of wins over Kong Wang and Carly Judice. These are really good wins, guys, especially if you've been keeping tabs on this division, especially for the women's division. Judice is on a bit of a streak herself. Really good back-to-back wins in her last two outings. And then Kong Wang was a very highly touted prospect off of, I think it was Dana White's Contender Series, if I'm not mistaken. Had some power in her hands and was able to knock her opponent out. So having two back-to-back wins over, younger up-and-coming prospects is a very good sign for Fernandez. Before that, she had a couple losses, but all decision losses. Nothing that was like her being submitted, her being KO'd. She hasn't had that happen yet. Now, Julija Stoliarenko, on the other hand, she has a 1-fight loss streak. She last fought on February 3rd, 2024. So she has been out of the cage for quite some time now, over a year and 5 months at this point. And so her last 4 fights, she has not done too bad. She has a loss over Luana Carolina, a win over Molly McCann, a loss to Chelsea Chandler, which has not aged very well, and a win over Jessica Rose Clark. And now looking at the intangibles and X factors. So neither of these women are the home fighter, but in this case, I think Fernandez has a little bit of pressure here. She's going to want to keep building on this current streak she has in, a 2-fight win streak. And I would say on the side of Stoliarenko, she is going to want to have a competitive fight. She did lose her last outing. She's really not getting up there in age. She's kind of the same age as Fernandez, but she's had so many losses in her career that you start to wonder, like, if she's not able to put it together, like, is there anything else for her in the UFC? She also took a lot of damage in recent fights. I would just say for Stoliarenko, it is important for her to look competitive out there. So guys, in my pick, I'm going Gabriella Fernandes, but one thing I was going to say when I was looking at the last slide is that Stoliarenko has that armbar ability where she could potentially snatch an arm and actually walk away with the win. She is one of these weird dark horses of the women's division where like she could pull off that armbar from almost anywhere and change the outcome of a fight because of it. So keep that in mind. I think Fernandes is likely to, I just think she's a better fighter overall, but more crispy on the feet, has better ways of mixing in the striking and the grappling. And I can see her probably bringing this to a decision, 3 out of 5 confidence level. The next fight on the card, fight number 2 of the night, we have Uroš Medić versus Gilbert Urbina. Gilbert came from, what's that show? The Ultimate Fighter. Now, Uroš Medić, 32 years old, 6'1", 71-inch reach, 10-3 record with a 4-3 record in the UFC. Gilbert Urbina, on the other hand, 29 years old, 6'3", 75-inch reach, 7-3 record, 1-2 in the UFC. Jumping into the styles for fight number 2, we've got Uroš Medić is 80% of his wins by KO. So if this guy is likely to get it done, it's going to be on the feet. He's a great striker with power in his hands, so that's another note that I added. Some weaknesses is that he has 67% of his losses by submission, so he does need to be on the lookout for any type of submissions that would come his way from Urbina. Now, Urbina, on the other hand, looking at his strengths, weaknesses, Urbina's 28% of his wins are by KO and 28% are by submission. So I think he's kind of a mixed bag because most of his fights are won on the side of a decision, but it seems as though the stats don't lie. If he has a chance to get the KO or the sub, he does go for it, but I don't think he's necessarily a true submission threat where he's going to be consistently going for submissions. I think that would be the only area where Uroš Medić now has to worry in terms of this fight because of the fact that he's been susceptible to submissions in the past. Now, finally, a weakness I have for Urbina is he has been very open to counter shots and he is very susceptible to being knocked out. Like in a lot of fights I've seen him in, I saw him on the Contender Series where he got flatline KO'd by Tresean Gore, and then he got flatline KO'd by Charles Chuck Buffalo Radke. So I think that is something to call out for Urbina, especially going up against a heavy-handed power striker like Uroš Medić. All right, looking at momentum check for fight number 2, we've got Uroš Medić on a 1-loss streak, and so is Gilbert Urbina. So both of them are on 1-loss streak. Medić, a little bit more active, last fought on January 11, 2025. Urbina was out since 2/3/2024, so him and Stoliarenko have both been out for about a year and 6 months. Last 4 fights, so Medić lost to Punahele Soriano, then he got a win over Tim Means before that, a loss to Mincy Betts Orolbai, and then a win over Matthew Semmelsberger, which is, I think, a pretty solid win. Urbina, on the other hand, he last fought Chuck Buffalo Radke, was KO'd on February 3rd, 2024. He won over Orion Koski. I don't remember who that guy is, but I've seen his name before. I definitely saw that fight. But then Urbina also lost to a couple folks before that, Brian Battle and Tresean Gore. So those are his last 4 fights. Jumping into the intangibles and X factors for this fight, we've got neither one of these guys is a home fighter. And really all I have here in terms of pressure is both guys are coming off a loss. They're both going to be having that pressure to get back in the win column. And a red flag I called out for Urbina is, will he have ring rust? Now, you have a couple ways of looking at this. He could have ring rust, but it could also be that he needed some time to, rest, recover from being KO'd, and get his head back on straight. So that could be another situation. So maybe this actually becomes a positive for him. But I am going to have to go. I am picking Uroš Medić in this fight, and the reason being is just I feel he's just a better striker, better stand-up on the feet, and I think he has a better chance of withstanding shots from Urbina that Urbina might not be able to handle from him. So in my opinion, this is likely to end in a KO. I could see, or Medić getting him up against the cage and landing a kill shot, And ultimately, I have a 3 out of 5 confidence level. Jumping into our next fight, it's fight number 3 on this fight card. We've got Joselyne Edwards versus Priscila Cachoeira, the zombie. Now, Edwards, 29 years old, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 15-6 record with a 6-4 record in the UFC. Cachoeira, 36, 5'7", 65-inch reach, 13-6 record with a 5-6 record in the UFC. So, taking a look at the styles for fight number 3, Joselyne Edwards is a great kickboxing style type of fighter. I would say good size advantage too for this division, especially like her legs. I've said this before. She's got very big legs. 40% of her wins are by KO. Some weaknesses for her is I just feel like she has this tendency when losing fights to lose in a situation where it's a close matchup and she loses a decision. So it's almost like she seems to lose fights when she's not able to get that control of the fight on the feet. Now, it seems like a very basic statement, but I haven't seen her in many fights where it's like a back and forth type thing, but she's able to regain control and get a win. It seems like mostly in fights where she's not able to get that control, she just doesn't end up getting it at all. And so I think that is something to call out. Now, Priscila Cachoeira, she has powerful hands. She showed that in her last fight with a nice flatline KO over Joselyne Nunez, who no one thought would beat her. I think everybody on that card actually had picked Joselyne Nunez, and we were all wrong. Cachoeira has powerful hands, guys. 62% of her wins are by KO. That's pretty high percentage, especially for like a women's division. And I'm not shitting on women. It's like statistically, if you look at the women fighters, you don't see finish rates, especially from a KO perspective, that are that high. So that's pretty good. Weaknesses, though, is that Cachoeira is very open to counters on the feet. Her nickname is exactly what it sounds like. She is a zombie. She keeps her chin wide open to be hit and basically just says, I'm going to eat yours. Let's see if you can eat mine. That's what she does. Not a very good grappler either. All of her losses, 4 losses are by sub. Not all of them, but most of them are by submission. Momentum check for fight number 3. We've got Joselyne Edwards on a 2-fight win streak and Priscila Cachoeira on a 1-fight win streak. Joselyne Edwards fought on April 26, 2025, and Cachoeira fought on 5/15/2025. So both of them pretty active here, getting back in there for the second time this year. Looking at Joselyne Edwards' last 4 fights, a win over Chelsea Chandler where she knocked her out, a win over Vidal before that, a loss to Perez, and a loss to Cornole. And then looking at the last 4 fights for Cachoeira, she had a win over Joselyne Nunez, a loss to Jasdavicius, a loss to Marina Maverick, and a loss to a win over De Silva prior to that. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors. So neither fighter here is the home fighter. What I will say is Joselyne Edwards is going to want to continue to extend this win streak. I don't think Priscila Cachoeira has as much up against her in terms of pressure, being that she's only on a 1-fight win streak. I think obviously she's going to want to get another win, but I just don't think it's as much pressure as the pressure that comes from Joselyne Edwards having a several-fight win streak or 2-fight win streak. Guys, my pick. I am going Joselyne Edwards. Basically what I had written down here. I just think she's got not only a youth advantage here by several years, I just think she's also going to have a size advantage. She's also going to have the ability to mix in the grappling if she needs to. So if she's not liking how things are looking on the feet, she has that opportunity, especially from a size perspective, where I think she could get Cachoeira against the cage and find a takedown from there. And then also, once on the ground, has submission opportunities as well. I do see this going to decision, and I have a 3 out of 5 confidence. All right, fight number 4 on the card. We got Elijah Smith versus Toshiomi Kazama. Now, Elijah Smith, 22 years old, 5'9", 71-inch reach, 8-1, 1-0 in the UFC. Toshiomi is 28 years old, 5'7". I wrote his weight twice for some reason. I don't know what his reach is. I think his reach was like 66 inches, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, guys. His record, 11-4, 1-2 in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for fight number 4, we've got Elijah Smith, very good striker, 50% of his wins by KO. What I would say is a weakness for him, and there's not a lot of data here because of his lack of experience thus far in the UFC, but he has been knocked out in the past, so that is something to keep in mind. Not that it's something he generally needs to worry about with Toshiomi here, but anything can happen, guys, as we know. Toshiomi, on the other hand, strengths for him is that he's a very great grappler. 55% of his wins are by submission. Then looking at his weaknesses, 75% of his losses are by KO. And he's not a very good defensive striker when you're talking about, the ability to not only be defensive on the feet, but slipping shots and taking care of yourself on the feet. He's just not very good in that respect. So that's something to call out for Toshiomi. Taking a look at their momentum for fight number 4, Elijah Smith is on a 6-fight win streak. He last fought just after Valentine's Day, 2/15/2025. He has several wins, as I mentioned, a 6-fight win streak. So a win over Morales, a win over Tao, a win over Walker, a win over, I don't know who that is. Then taking a look at Toshiomi, on the other hand, 1-fight win streak, last fought August 10th, 2024. So he's almost been out for a year at this point. Actually, it'll be literally a year this Sunday. So he'll literally have been out of the octagon for 364 days by the time he gets in there Saturday. His last win was over Gregorio, but he had a loss to Garrett Armfield before that and a loss to Nakamura before that, both KOs. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors for this fight. So Elijah Smith and Kazama are not the home fighters here. Elijah Smith has a lot of pressure, I think, to get another win, keep this win streak going that he has. Another variable there, too, for him is he is the son of a former UFC fighter in Gilbert Smith, who had his own finishes and great fights in the UFC. So that's something to call out there. Toshiomi, on the other hand, just as much pressure to continue on and getting another win. Toshiomi is going to be looking to get another win and add on to his current 1-win streak. So there is pressure there for that. And what I would say is that red flags for me in this is Toshiomi has not done very well with good strikers in the past. And that leads into my pick. I am going Elijah Smith in this fight. I think that Elijah Smith is not only the younger, fresher fighter. I think his hands are really what's going to make the difference here. I could see him catching Toshiomi and knocking him out. As I have with others, not very confident though, 3-5. 3 out of 5. All right, guys. Jumping into fight number 5 on this card, we've got Julius Juicebox Walker versus Raffael Cerqueira. I don't know how to say his last name. Julius Walker is 26 years old, 6'4" with a 78-inch reach, 6-1 record with an 0-1 record in the UFC. Raffael is 35 years old, 6'3", 76-inch reach, 11-2, 0-2 in the UFC. Jumping into the styles for fight number 5, Julius Walker has several strengths. 67% of his wins are by knockout. 33% of them are by submission. He has a 100% finish rate in his wins for his overall career and UFC career. He hasn't gotten a win in the UFC yet, though. Weaknesses for him is that he seemed to gas out in his last fight a little bit, but he was always still there and competitive. I was very surprised to see how well he was able to handle some of the big shots that Alonzo Menafield was landing on him. And I think that is actually something that makes me lean towards him in this fight, given that he seemed to have his own ability on the feet, landing his own hands, get good jab on him, but also the ability to withstand the shots coming back at him, especially from a power puncher like Alonzo Menafield. Now, Raffael, on the other hand, 73% of his wins are by KO, 18% are by sub, so he's not much of a submission threat, more so of a threat on the feet, though. What I would say is weaknesses for him is, although he was 11-0 when he got into the UFC, he seems to be susceptible to being knocked out as of recent, especially if you look at his last 2 outings. I do think that is something to keep in mind heavily here as you weigh your options. He also is 35, which is getting up there in age, especially for, I guess not especially for, because middleweight is a little bit heavier, but still getting up there in age, past that 35-year-old mark. Momentum check for fight number 5. So looking at these two fighters, Julius Walker's coming off of one loss. It was his first career loss, as I mentioned, and he last fought on 2/22/25. So did Raffael C. He lost on 2/22/25, but he has a two fight losing streak, losing to Balkauskas and Aslan by KO. And then if you want to look at Julius Walker's last 4 fights, he lost to Menefield, and before that, he had wins over several folks because he was 6-0 before he made his UFC debut. The intangibles and X factors for fight number 5. We've got neither fighter as the home fighter, but I would say Julius Walker has a lot of pressure to get a UFC win, and I would say so does Raffael. He's going to want to get his first UFC win. Now having 2 fights where he lost in both, he's definitely going to be looking to bounce back here and get something going in terms of his career and getting a win, especially in the UFC. And the only other variable I called out is that I think Julius Walker, I think he looked really good in the fight against Menefield, but for the fact that he could withstand the shots Menefield was throwing at him, and was able to land a lot of shots of his own. So I think in this fight, I am going to have to pick Julius Walker, and I'm picking Julius Walker because he has the youth advantage. He's not that less experienced when you compare him to Raffael. I also think that his ability to withstand shots from Menefield could be a great sign for him being able to eat any of the shots that Raffael is able to throw at him, but then also has that reach advantage where he can be sticking the jab on him and landing shots from range. I think that's Julius Walker's like bread and butter. If you look at his frame and his size, that is going to be something that he's looking to do. And I think he did that decently well against Alonzo Menefield, although Menefield did land the bigger shots in that fight. I could see Julius getting a KO or a sub here, but I'm not super confident. 3 out of 5. And jumping into fight number 6, we got Eryk. It's your boy Anders. Guys, I say that like, it's your boy because that's literally his fucking nickname. I was dying when I read that. And then we have Christian Leroy Duncan, CLD, D, referee in charge. Okay. Eryk Anders is 38 years old, 6'1", a 75-inch reach, 17-8 with a 9-8 record in the UFC. CLD is 30 years old, 6'2", 79-inch reach, very long reach for him. 11-2 record, 4-2 in the UFC. Looking at the styles for fight number 6, Eryk Anders is a bit of a KO artist. If you look at his record, 59% of his wins by KO. He does have pretty low striking defense, which is a worrying thing for me in this fight, especially why I called it out as a weakness. At 50%, he means that he is absorbing like half the strikes thrown at him is the way I understand it anyways. But 50% is his striking defense based on UFCstats.com. If you guys are interested, go look. Another weakness is his age. He's 38 years old, so he's getting up there. CLD, on the other hand, some strengths for him. He's a great striker. 73% of his wins are by KO. He's never been finished. And I call that out because Eryk Anders has that tendency to find finishes on guys at times, but CLD never being finished, I think, is playing in his favor here. What I would also say, though, in weaknesses for CLD, he is very hittable. Low striking defense, 51%. He can also be taken down, which is a bit worrying. Only 72% takedown defense. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Taking a look at the momentum check for fight number 6, Eryk Anders coming off a 2-fight win streak, and CLD has a 1-fight win streak. Eryk Anders last fought on December 7, 2024, whereas CLD, a bit more active this year, last fought in London on 3/22/2025. The last 4 fights for Anders were a win over Chris Weidman, a win over Jamie Pickett, a loss over Barrio, and a win over Kyle Dawkins. I haven't heard from Kyle Dawkins in a while, man. He's been out for some time. I think he's actually in a different organization now. Last 4 fights for CLD are a win over Pulayev, who just got a win this past weekend, a loss by decision to Robocop, a win over Ribeiro, a win over Tuluin. The intangibles and X factors for fight number 6. So Eryk Anders is not the home fighter. I would say he has pressure to continue building on this win streak he has currently at 2. He's going to want to get that to 3 if he can. But I think, I said before, red flags for me is that he's 38 years old. He's definitely getting up there in age. He's He's going up against a fast and hungry striker in CLD. CLD, though, it has a tendency, guys, at times to just do that English thing where he just takes pictures and he's not like actually being active and things like that. And I don't want to say it's like an English thing, but I just feel like Leon Edwards does that. Jai Herbert does that. Maybe it's just like that type of style, but they just happen to all be English. No disrespect, though. Shout out to because, dude, the English, you guys also got Tom Aspinall, you got Paddy Pimblett, you got some marauders, Michael Bisping, like guys that will go for finishes. So it's definitely not an English thing. It's clearly their type style thing. So I correct myself. Now, pressure for CLD is I think he needs to build up a win streak here if he wants to have any success in the middleweight division. A red flag for me is just that if Eryk Anders is mixing in his grappling the way I think he might, there might be some issues there for CLD. Guys, I will say I am going with CLD, but I want to call out that if any of you are hunting an underdog, Eryk Anders might not be the worst decision, especially for a big underdog. I imagine he probably is one. I didn't even check the odds, but I imagine he is one. Eryk Anders has a gritty style, and I think that if he's mixing in the grappling the way he might, he could give CLD a lot of problems. Where I worry about this fight, though, for Anders is just staying on the feet with CLD at all is going to be problematic because CLD's fast and knows how to mix in his combinations. Very good kickboxer. Like, he's going to land shots. So it's like if Anders can mix in that grappling quickly, it could be a very long night for CLD, and I could actually see CLD potentially losing that way. So just keep that in mind, guys, if you're interested at all in doing like some type of underdog type pick. Ultimately, I don't see CLD finishing this fight. He doesn't tend to finish fights, in my opinion, at least ones I've seen in UFC. So I think this goes to decision, 3 out of 5 confidence. Jumping into fight number 7 of this weekend's card, we got Miles Johns versus Gene Matsumoto. Now, Miles Johns, 31 years old, 5'7" with a 66-inch reach, 15-3 overall record, 6-3 in the UFC. Matsumoto is 25 years old, 5'6", 68.5-inch reach, 16-1 record, 2-1 in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for fight number 7, Miles Johns is somewhat of a KO artist. Miles Johns is somewhat of a KO threat. Only 27% of his wins are by KO, which I was honestly shocked by. I thought Miles Johns had way more knockouts, but I think that Miles Johns just has heavy hands maybe. He's hurt guys, I think, on the feet, but maybe not finished. But taking a look at some other stats that I think are very interesting for Miles Johns, he only has 1 loss by submission in his career, and he has an 81% takedown defense, which I think is going to play heavily in his favor here. He's one of those shorter, stockier builds, which I think helps him quite a bit too, maintaining a center of gravity where it's probably harder to get him to the ground, similar to like a Volkanovski. Now, weaknesses for him is he's got decent striking defense at 67%, but it's not perfect. Like, he still is able to be caught on the feet. So that's something to call out and just have a little bit of weariness on. Now, Matsumoto, I think he has a very mixed bag type of game. He can mix in all kinds of things. 38% of his wins by sub, 38% of his wins by KO, and 19% by submission. It might be flip-flop there. Regardless, he has ways to finish the fight in both realms. Now, weaknesses for Matsumoto, I think he had a very hard time in his last fight where Rob Font was just on him the whole time, pumping the jab out there, and really just taking control of the fight. And it just seemed like he didn't have a very good response to it. And I'd also call out he has a 45% striking defense, which is very, very low for compared to what you've seen in already. Like, I don't think any of the other fighters had below 50 at this point. I could be wrong, but 45% on his side, which is worrisome because Miles Johns does have hands where he could crack him. Momentum check for fight number 7. So Miles Johns and Matsumoto are both coming off of a loss. Miles Johns last fought on 12/14/2024, and Matsumoto fought on February 22nd, 2025. Now, I know a lot of people, guys, they're thinking this guy's like the bee's knees, right? Miles Johns, last fought Felipe Lima, which was a good fight, but he lost. He got a win over De Andrade and a win over Gibson before that. And then looking at Matsumoto, he had a loss to Rob Font, a win over Brackettona, a win over Dan Argueta, and a win over Tanner. I will say Miles Johns also had a win over Dan Argueta, but I think he got it like no contest for steroids or some shit, I think. Jumping into the intangibles and X Factors for fight number 7. So I would say neither of these fighters are home fighters here. I would say that the only pressure these guys have is just to bounce back, get a bounce back win into that win column. I am going to say, guys, in this fight, I haven't been wrong yet, and maybe I'm just being risky here. I'm like not super sure on this, but I just have a gut feeling that Miles Johns is going to like be a gritty vet here and find a way to win over Matsumoto. It could be dead wrong though. This is actually less confident than I was in other ones, but I just feel like because of his takedown defense, his powerful striking, I think he could give Matsumoto some trouble on the feet and make it a little bit difficult for him to find that way of getting a win. I could see him getting a decision win here on the side of Miles Johns. 2 out of 5 confidence. Take it for what it's worth. Jumping into fight number 8 of the card, we got Andre Touchy Fili, one of the best nicknames ever, versus C-Rod Christian Rodriguez. So, Fili's 35 years old, 5'11", 74-inch reach, 24-12, 12-11 in the UFC. And C-Rod, on the other hand, is 27 years old, 5'7", 71.5-inch reach, 12-3 record, 5-3 in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for fight number 8. So, Andre Touchy Fili, great. I would say he's a great fighter because he's got all-around skills. He's been in there and been in the UFC for over a decade now and been in there with the best. Like, he has fought a lot of different guys. I would say another call out here is 42% of his wins by KO. So he does like to mix it up on the feet and land those kill shots. I would say in fights where he's actually the winner, it tends to end in a finish. So like his like overall average fight time is less than 15 minutes, which is very representative of that fact that he goes for finishes or he gets finished. Weakness for Andre Fili is that he has low takedown defense at 70%. Looking at C-Rod, on the other hand, very well-rounded fighter. This guy has a very good mixed bag of skills, very good scrambling, good offensive and defensive wrestling, can find reversals. From a grappling perspective, can get guys in submissions and attack submissions. Also on the feet, pretty scrappy there as well. I mean, in his last fight when he was fighting Bashi, was really just landing those fucking shots right on that guy's face, tagging him up. And he's got great wins over up-and-coming prospects. So one thing I would call as a weakness for him on the side of C-Rod is I feel like he can fall victim to being in very close fights where he might maybe should win, but then ends up not winning because of certain things. Like I think his last fight was very close where Costa was able just to win in certain exchanges that ultimately got Costa the win. And I think that is something to call out is when he's in those competitive fights, he doesn't always find that way to pull off the win. Taking a look at the momentum check for fight number 8, we've got Andre Touchy Fili last fought on February 22nd, 2025, where he was choked out by Melikizel Costa, who also beat Christian Rodriguez a month and 7 days later when they fought in Mexico City. So Andre Fili's fights before that, he had a win over Cub Swanson, which was a split decision, a KO loss to Dan Ige, and then a win over Lucas Almeida. And then taking a look at C-Rod, on the other hand, a win over Austin Bashi, a loss to Julian Erosa, and a win over Dolgarian. So that is where these two stand, both with 1-loss streak. And really, guys, from a pressure perspective, it's the same shit. I think that both of them are going to want to get back in the win column. Touchy Fili is now 35, so he's getting up there in age, especially for this division. So I think that they're just going to be looking to both get back in the win column and have a competitive fight here. Overall, guys, I do fuck with Touchy Fili, but I have to go with C-Rod. I think that C-Rod has the better mixed bag of skills. I could see C-Rod finding a takedown or several takedowns in this fight and likely either imposing his will on the ground, getting some ground and pound shots off, or even getting Fili in some submission. That is kind of the way I see this one happening as. And I would say I have like a 2 out of 5 confidence level because I'm not 1,000% sure C-Rod will get a submission. I do think regardless, C-Rod walks away with the win. Fight number 9 of the card, one of the People's Champ type fights here. Iasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill. Lucindo's 23 years old, 5'3", 66-inch reach, 17-6 record with a 4-2 record in the UFC. Angela Hill, on the other hand, 40 years old, but still fucking going. 5'3", 64.5-inch reach, and then a 18-4 record, or 18-14 record, 13-14 in the UFC. My God. Jumping into the styles for fight number 9. So Iasmin Lucindo, 47% of her wins by KO, 35% of her wins by decision, 65% striking defense. So she is pretty crafty on the feet, has an ability to not only defend herself, but land her own shots. Weaknesses I would call out for her. She doesn't seem to do well with grappling defense, at least in the things that I've seen. Like in fights where she's actually lost, it's like fights where her previous opponents were able to get several takedowns. So she is a grappling type fighter as well. She will look for takedowns in fights. But like if you go look at some of her previous fights, in the fights where she is like less active grappling or getting less takedowns than her opponents, she tends to be the one that loses the fight, which says to me they're getting takedowns and a lot of control time if you're just looking at those basic stats, right? Now, Angela Hill, on the other hand, 67% of her wins are by decision. 50% of her, she has a 50% striking accuracy. And I have to call that out, guys, because really, like, what's crazy about Angela Hill, she is like such a crafty vet, and she doesn't have, like, if you look at her record, she's not like this huge submission artist, not a KO artist. She's more of like a grinded out decisioner who's able to break opponents in those later rounds. She just never gets tired and is always pushing a pace on her opponents. And just finds ways to break them. I would say for Angela Hill, though, if you look at a lot of her losses, very close split decision losses, and she also has a lot of very close split decision wins. So just keep all of that in mind as you're looking at this fight. Taking a look at the momentum check for fight number 9, Iasmin Lucindo is coming off of a loss, Angela Hill coming off of a win. Lucindo last fought March 8, 2025, and Angela Hill fought on February 15, 2025. Last 4 fights for Lucindo: lost to Amanda Lemos, a win over Rodriguez, a win over Kolak, and then a win over Viana. And then taking a look at the last 4 fights for Angela Hill: a win over Sousa, a loss to Tabitha Ricci, a win over Pinheiro, and a win over Denise Gomes. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors. So Lucindo and Angela Hill are not home fighters here. For Lucindo, she's got high pressure to get a win here, especially over someone like Angela Hill, who's an aging fighter in the strawweight weight class. Now, on the side of Angela Hill, I would say the only pressure that she really has is just to keep building off of a win streak and that she could build off of, and off of young, hungry prospects at that. And I also think there's that age difference too. Like, although Angela Hill's at a disadvantage because she's 40, Lucindo's 23. So she's still pretty young at the same time. Guys, you might think I'm crazy. I'm going Angela Hill in this fight. And now I will say, while I was reading all of these details, I almost talked myself out of not picking Hill, but I'm going to Angela Hill. I think that Angela Hill has this style that is very difficult to deal with. And unless her opponent finds a way to like finish the fight, which most don't, she's likely to grind out a decision. So I feel like Angela Hill could do that here. It could be way off though, guys. It's just, this is all based off of what we think might happen. So 3 out of 5 confidence level, but I could see that decision going the way of Angela Hill. Hey, I picked Chris Duncan last week, so you guys better fucking follow it. Fight number 10 and the co-main event of this fight night. We've got Steve Erceg versus Ode Osborne. Steve Erceg, 30 years old, 5'8", 68.5-inch reach, 12-4 record, 3-3 in the UFC. Looking at Ode Osborne, 33, 5'7", 73-inch reach, 13-8 record with a 5-6 record in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for fight number 10. Erceg is a really skilled striker, but all around MMA game as well is solid from him. What I would call out here, guys, and this was interesting to me, Steve Erceg really doesn't have a lot of knockouts. He has been deemed this knockout artist, but he really only has, like, I think the percentage was like 17% or something like that in terms of TKOs. Now, 50% of his wins are by submission, actually. So he is very well-rounded when it comes to striking and being on the ground. And then it looks like here 52% striking defense. So he is decent at keeping himself safe, if you will. When you look at that percentage there, it's a higher percentage for especially a male fighter in a weight class where they're throwing a lot of significant strikes. Weaknesses for Erceg is that he can definitely be open to counters in the feet, especially like overhands, right? We saw what happened when Kai Kara-France, I think he landed 2 overhands like not too long after one another and was able to really just, drop Erceg and get him out of there. And then, in his other fights too, like he had a very competitive scrap with both Pantoja and Moreno. Very good on the feet though. So like that is, we have those examples where he's gone 5 rounds with the best in the world, right? So taking a look at Ode Osborne. So 38% of his wins by KO. So he's more of a KO artist, but he also has submissions. So 38% of wins by submission as well. Weaknesses for Ode is that he's very open on the feet at times. Only 46% striking defense. So that tells me that he's being hit more than he's hitting, essentially, if you look at those statistics. Taking a look at the momentum check here, you've got Steve Erceg on a 3-fight skid, which is crazy, but we'll get into that. And then Ode Osborne on a 1-fight win streak. I actually picked him to beat Garule, and I got that one right. No one else picked him, so fuck you guys. Steve Erceg last fought on March 29, 2025, whereas Ode Osborne fought on April 5th, 2025. I'm remembering that weekend now. My dog got spayed, so like I was like holed up in the room with her all weekend because she was hurting. Steve Erceg's last 4 fights, like I said, 3-fight skid. He lost to Moreno, he lost to Kai Kara-France, and he lost to Pantoja. Guys, Kai Kara-France loss might not be that great, but losing to Pantoja and Moreno, but even Kai Kara-France, they had so much experience, all 3 of those fighters, and 3 fighters that are highly ranked in that flyweight division. Win over Matt Schnell prior to that. Ode Osborne win over a loss to Sleepy Boy Rodriguez that he didn't actually lose because Sleepy Boy Rodriguez basically was Sleepy Boy on the ground and then somehow bounced back, but he should have lost that fight. A loss to Filo and then a loss to Almabayev. So Ode Osborne just broke a 3-fight skid, and I am expecting that Steve Erceg will do that this time. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors. For fight number 10. Neither fighter is the home fighter here, but I would say someone like Steve Erceg has a ton of pressure to break this 3-fight skid that he is on. Needs to get a win here, guys. This is very important. Now, Ode Osborne, on the other hand, I think this is a great opportunity for him. He is on a 1-fight win streak now, and a win over Steve Erceg could catapult him into the higher parts of the flyweight rankings. Guys, I'm going with Steve Erceg in this fight. I think that Erceg is just a better, more technical striker who will give some problems to Ode on the feet. It's only a 3-round fight, I believe. Also, Steve Erceg is a guy who will have the grappling there if he needs it. And I think that will also play a role in his success in this fight. I see it going to decision on the side of Steve Erceg, 4 out of 5 confidence. All right, guys, jumping into the last fight on the card, which is fight number 11, and it is the main event between Roman Dolidze and Anthony Hernandez. Taking a look at Roman Dolidze, 37 years old, 6'2", 76-inch reach, 15-3 record, 9-3 in the UFC. And Anthony Hernandez, on the other hand, 31 years old, 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach. Damn, that's a 5+5 ape index. Good job, Anthony. 14-2 record with an 8-2 record in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for fight number 11, we've got 53% of wins by KO on the side of Roman Dolidze. He also has a very good clinch game if he's able to get his opponent against the cage, gets a clinch going, throws those clinch knees, can be very dirty in that area, very flexible as well in the hips to be able to get some of those KOs. Like he did KO Kyle Dawkins that way. The dexterity of his hips is pretty solid. Yeah. A weakness for Roman Dolidze that I called out, he has very, very piss poor takedown defense, 33%. So that tells you all you need to know there. On the side of Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, some strengths for him. He's extremely durable extremely durable with great cardio. He has this tendency to like get hurt to the body in fights, but then randomly like build steam as the fight goes on, where his opponent starts to wilt. Also very good with submissions. 56% of his wins are by sub. And what I would say his weaknesses is just he seems to get tagged on the feet a little bit, especially like he does not like body shots. So like when he's hit to the body, it doesn't seem to go well for him. He did get a loss on his record to Kevin Holland that way. And I do think in his last fight, he was, even against Kopylov landed a kick on him that I think hurt him initially, but then he ends up piecing up Kopylov and then choking him out. So he just has this tendency to stay in fights and find a way to win. Jumping into the momentum check for fight 11. Roman Dolidze is on a 3-fight win streak. Last fought March 15, 2025, a win over Marvin Vettori, a win over Holland before that, and a win over Anthony Smith before that. A loss to Imavov was his last loss. Now, Anthony Hernandez, 7-fight win streak. Last one on February 22nd, 2025 against Brendan Allen. Before that, a win over Michel Pereira, a win over Kopylov before that, and then a win over Shabazian before that. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors. So I have that Roman Dolidze is the home fighter here because he does train out of Vegas. Pretty sure he trains with Eryk Nixick at Extreme Couture. So I think that he is considered a home fighter here. And I say he has pressure here too, guys. It's a main event. He is going to want to continue building on the win streak he has. And not only that, but want to advance in the rankings because right now I believe he's number 10 and Anthony Hernandez is number 8. So a win here for Dolidze would just push him up ever so slightly more in those middleweight rankings. Hernandez, on the other hand, is not the home fighter. I think he has more pressure. He's coming in this fight with a 7-fight win streak, the higher ranking as well. He has a lot of the chips or risk, I guess, if you will, on his side, where the opportunity seems to be more in favor of like a Roman Dolidze. But I would say another variable there is just I do worry a little bit about the power that Dolidze does have. Dolidze hasn't always been like super like this like strike KO oriented type person where he's going out there and just starching guys out on the feet. But he does have wins by KO, and I think that he is a very powerful striker. So I do worry about that for Hernandez. Ultimately, guys, I am picking Fluffy Hernandez in this fight because I think that his wrestling and his submission threat mixed in with his gas tank is going to be a lot of issues for Roman Dolidze, especially as this fight goes on. If you guys remember in his last fight, Roman Dolidze gassed badly against Vettori. He's gassed badly against Imavov. He does not seem to have a solid gas tank for 5-round fighting, in my opinion. And going up against a guy like Fluffy Hernandez, who seems to grow into the fight as it goes on, like he has this weird gas tank that like seems never ending almost. And I can just see that playing a huge role in Fluffy Hernandez getting, either winning rounds late or even finding opportunities to finish the fight late. I see it going to decision, and I have a 4 out of 5 confidence that Hernandez will get it done. Well, there you guys have it. Those are my fight predictions and picks for UFC Vegas 109. Make sure you guys comment below. What are your parlays for this weekend? What are you thinking? What are you trying to build? Let's see if we can do some stuff together. I'm not going to be betting, of course, because I don't do that. But I hope you guys find some fun parlays that can make you some money. And I'll give you some options as well if I can. Just want to say thank you all so much for your engagement watching these videos. I truly, truly appreciate it. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Fight Feed if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the